What's up YouTube, and welcome back to another tutorial using Infinite Painter. If you want to follow along with today's tutorial, you can do in any app of your choice. I've got two different options in the description down below. You can download the palette file if you're an Infinite Painter user, and if you're using a different app, you can download the image of the palette, which you can then import into your app of choice. Now, of course, this is a Halloween themed design, and can you spot the hidden element within our tree? Well, it is in fact this crow here in the middle. We've got the head up here, the eye and the beak, and then the chest and its legs down here. So we've got a hidden element in today's design. Now there's a guide for the crow just to help you draw that out and make sure everything's positioned correctly. And again, you'll find a link to all of the requirements in the description down below. So make sure to grab everything for today's design, including the canvas size as well. And if you want to support the channel and all the work that I do here, well, first of all, you can subscribe to the channel. It helped me out a great deal. But if you want to, you can actually become a member of the channel. You get a loyalty badge beside your name that grows over time. And you also get early access to these tutorials. And also I've got a couple now of exclusive content as well. So make sure to check that out using the link in the description down below. Enjoy today's tutorial and let's get started. So we're going to go ahead and create a canvas size that is 2000 by 2000 and we'll hit create. And then, of course, you're going to want a few requirements. You're going to want the palette for today's design. So once you've imported it into Infinite Painter, I've got a helpful video in the description down below how to do that. You can tap here on this pill and you can select the crow tree palette. And then you've got all of the colors for today's design. Now, you're also going to want to go ahead and import the guide for today's design. So we'll go up to the three dots. We'll go to the option of import and you're going to want to grab the image from your photos or wherever you saved it from. When you tap on photos, go ahead and select the image that I've provided. And once you've done that, you'll notice that this window has now changed to import as, and we're going to import it as a layer and then hit the tick when we're done. So of course, we've got this crow design that's going to help us lay out our design. So we're going to tap on it. We're just going to bring the opacity down, probably down to around about 25 to 30%, just so we can vaguely see it. And then we're going to go ahead and create a new layer in front of it. We're going to go ahead and go to our colors in our palette and grab the first color, top left of the palette. And then we're going to go to our brush. We're going to tap on our brush. We're going to go to pens and we're going to use the Manga Inker. Now, I've got the size set to fairly large at the minute, probably around about 30 will do the trick for now. And the opacity, etc. is just 100%. Now, we want to go ahead and draw in the majority of this tree in terms of this area down here. So I'm going to simply start all the way at the very bottom, make my way all the way to the top. Now, another thing I want you to also introduce is if we go to our create tools, we go to the option of perspective and scroll across to grid. If we tap on that, we'll get this grid appear on our screen. We want to first of all go ahead and you want to tap on the magnet until you see these two dots. Drag this dot all the way into the bottom right corner, then tap on the magnet, and then that way you've now got a 4x4 grid. Now what that will do is that will allow you to see where I lay things out on my screen, and then you can lay them out as well in the same sort of positions. For example, I'm going to start just here, just over the halfway point, nice and light with the pen and press a little bit firmer to get some additional bumps and lumps. And then I'm just going to continue all the way up to this junction here and then start to get really thin along the top. Now, it's also important if I tap on my brush, I go to the settings of the brush. You can see I've got smoothing set all the way down to 12. That means that we get lots of jitters in our hand. Now, if you don't have pressure sensitivity, you are going to have to probably draw multiple lines multiple times. For example, you may have a lower brush size, let's say something like 7, and then just go back over it and thicken it up. That's probably what you're going to have to do if you don't have pressure sensitivity. So I'm going to tap back on there on my size and bring that back up to 32. You've always got to work around the equipment that you've got. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to very quickly just draw up to around about, say, this point here. Just thicken that up and off the screen. And then we're just going to go ahead and carry on with our roots. You can start off with just a bumpy line all the way across. And then you can get in there and just adapt it if you want to introduce some more interesting shapes to the roots. Maybe there's like one that sticks out a little bit lower. This one here is going to be quite important in a moment. So this one down here. And then just for a minute, link those two up at the top. So you've created a perfect loop. Go to your fill tool on tools and then tap and drag to the right a couple of times. When you drag to the right, you increase the strength of the fill, and then therefore you make sure that you enter it in correctly. And if you struggled with the fill tool there, I've got a really helpful video that I'll put in the description down below So it'll help you out in case it's not working as you expect it to. Okay, so that should help a few of your problems if it's going a little bit funny, which I know it can do for some people. I'm just going to thicken that up. Just watch how whereabouts I'm placing my lines. And we're going to go ahead and thicken this one up shortly, but we're going to introduce all of the main sort of avenues. We want to make sure we get this branch in here. Now, of course, you want your pressure just to gradually get smaller all the way to the very end, all the way down to the bottom there. And then we can go ahead and run additional branches off. We can also run branches off the tree here. So all we're trying to do is accommodate for a few, if not all, of the lines from my guide that I've provided. So it's not critical to get absolutely every single thing. The majority of the lines need to sort of come about from the actual face and the eye. That will give you your crow. All of these little lines down here are simply just additional lines that will just give your tree and the branches of it a little bit more content, but also give the wings of the bird a little bit more context. So this is meant to be a little bit of a kind of spooky themed design this week, where we've got a crow, because a crow normally is kind of associated with like horror films and Halloween, etc. So I'm going to draw in this one. This one's really important again, that we go all the way to the very bottom like that, getting gradually thinner. So they're all going to break out from this point here. And we'll just go ahead and simply just keep going. Just keep going. I can probably even link this one along here all the way to the end. Let's see if we can carry on from there as well, you know, coming down here. As long as you add in the odd little wobbles, you don't have to follow the lines fully. For example, this one takes over from this one here, this curved one. And then I could probably get in there and start thickening this up a little bit more. And potentially you may even want to bring your brush size down as well, maybe down to 20, just to try and be in control of all your wobbly lines in here, just so that you are, as I mentioned, in full control of your artwork and the lines in here and everything that we want to try and introduce here in the actual design. So we're just adding in lots of small details to start with. So a couple of thin lines across there. I might even run like a branch along here because I didn't quite like that line too much. And we'll move over here. You could probably even introduce like another very thin one, even though it doesn't sort of match up to anything on the guide. You just introduce a couple of thin branches off from that point. And we're going to add lots of smaller, thinner details in a minute. We're just trying to, again, get the majority of the main lines in here, one of which is going to be here. And then can we go ahead and sort of bring in this one here? Now, again, the eye is really important. So we've got to go over the eye. We've also got to go under the eye, round into here, and then run another little flick off here, just to create that rounded shape for the eye. And then here we could just probably break off all the way over to here. Can we go ahead and create an additional one that comes down? And you're trying to look for some of these wiggly lines that I've created in the guide. And you might not accommodate for every single one of them. And yours may look slightly different to mine. It may even look better than mine. It is always a random kind of thing with something like this, with branches. We're never going to properly get each other's bang on. So you can go ahead and just take a look at mine, see what kind of things I'm trying to implement. And then can you go ahead and do the same? You know, I'm wiggling this off now all the way to the end. Just trying to make sure that the beak has got some good detail in there. Creating all these branch lines. Hopefully they're believable. You can even link them up like this sometimes, just so that we don't necessarily know which one's in front of which. And then we can go ahead and go back down to here. We can get some of these tail feathers involved down here. A couple of thin ones. A little wiggle one off of there. And then this one here is a bit of a struggle to get to. So we're going to have to probably just like divert off of this line here. Just coming down there and then maybe across. Maybe it's been carried by the wind, or is that not believable enough? So instead we'll go ahead and we'll just simply go ahead and come down here. We'll wiggle all the way through, all the way down, and then we'll create branches off of there. We'll maybe create another one off of here too, another one off of there. Can we even then go ahead and thicken this up enough so that we could branch off again, no pun intended, all the way over here? And another one just to try and fill up a few of those lines that we're just missing at the bottom here, just to round off the body. Lovely. So we've got loads of branches in there now. And it's important also then to turn off your guide. See if it gives you the impression of the crow itself. Now at that point, once you've turned it off, you can then start to think about, okay, let me look at my main branch, my main trunk of the tree here. Let me go ahead and thicken that up all the way to the very top now, and then we'll fill that in. You can either fill it in manually like I am, or you can go ahead and use the fill tool, either. I'll set the brush back up to around about 32 now, just so I can get the rest of it in, because we also need to go ahead and sort of pivot off from here. We need to go ahead and sort of come up here and then up towards the top and then a little bit off screen like so. And then can we go ahead and also run in another couple of branches that just run away from that point. You can thicken them up, of course, as they get closer to the main trunk. You've always got to factor that in. You know, thicken it up as it makes its way back into the tree. You can go all the way up here and maybe even sharpen up that angle, you know, allow it just to have a real bend in there. And then this now definitely looks like the majority sort of the tree. But by giving it a good solid amount of sort of shape there, it helps us quickly identify sort of how this structure is, how it's standing up. Now at that point, I'm really happy with actually the whole tree. The only thing I'm now going to do is just set out sort of very small lines now. So about 13%, I've got the brush size set to. I'm just going to go ahead and draw in lots and lots of wiggly small lines. Now I'll show you over here in the crow before I move back over to there. You can just draw in a lot of these very small, very wiggly, super wiggly little sort of branches. You can add in a couple here and there, little flicks like that. So they're just like little curves, or you can create these kind of wiggly, squiggly lines off of each other, little something like that. Lovely, just nice and random. Now you do want to an extent, follow the whole concept of the design. The design is facing down. We want the majority of those branches to be facing down. I know I need to thicken this up here because that needs to connect in there with some good strength. Otherwise it would just simply fall. Likewise, probably the bit above. So we're just going to thicken that in a little bit more too, just so that's got some solidness to it, that it could hold up to a degree, the majority of that. And again, just lots of small little ones in here. We can see all the directions that all of these are going in. So I can just simply go ahead and just continue running in super small little detailed lines. As always with Infinite Painter, make sure occasionally to hit the 3 dots and hit save. It's really important, helps the app catch back up, and we can just allow ourselves to continue drawing without fear that the app's going to crash and we're going to lose our work or anything like that. Help it be a little bit more stable. Now that is coming along nicely. We can go ahead and run some additional lines coming down here. A couple more along there. A little couple of flicks up in here will look good. A couple like this. I can also, as I'm going round, I'm constantly evaluating what needs to be thicker potentially in the tree, just to make sure I can see all of it and it's all making sense. The only thing I would tend to say is up here, where we've got a little bit of sort of detail in terms of the eye, etc. Try to avoid putting too much detail in and around the actual eye itself. Otherwise, we're going to potentially make it a little bit too complicated to look at, and the eye itself will just look really odd and you won't be able to kind of work it out. If we can't work out the eye, sometimes it's really hard to then work out the whole rest of the design and what it is you're trying to pull off by hiding this kind of crow in and amongst the design. And you can do this with any sort of animal as well, with the tree kind of concept. A tree has so many options, especially in a silhouette like this. You can just hide it wherever you want in your design. Lovely. Now, all I'm going to do is just very quickly do exactly the same process over here. Lovely. So all I've done is added a bunch of small little branches in here. So feel free to pause it at this point if you want to match up to mine to a sort of a concept. And then I've just added a few tiny little extra ones in here as well. Now at this point is when we want to start adding in content that's going to sit towards the back, and then we'll come back to the tree. Again, 3 dots, we'll hit save. We'll go ahead and we'll create a new layer and we'll drag it underneath our tree. So we want to hold down on the layer and drag it underneath. We'll go to our brush, we'll just make it a little bit bigger again, up to say around about 30%. And we're going to go ahead and draw in a line somewhat up here that's then going to run behind the tree along this root and then just continue all the way down towards the very bottom left corner. And then we'll go to our tools, we'll go to fill, and we'll tap and drag to the right a couple of times and hit the tick when you're done. We're then going to continue, as I mentioned, going further back. So we're going to tap on our guide down here. We'll create a new layer in front of it. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to go ahead and grab this color here. It is the bottom row and it's the fourth color along. We're going to go ahead and set our brush to the option of a paint brush. So we're going to go to our paint section. We're going to go ahead and use the old Gouache brush. And we're going to set the size. It's currently set to about 284. Now what we're going to do is take a look at my guide. We want to run through this very center point of our design. And we're just going to use this brush because it's got nice random sort of blades of the brush in here. I want to create almost like a bit of a tree line. Now, don't worry about the colors, etc., and all the different hues that the brush tends to make. I'm just going to go ahead and just fill that in just to start with. We want to make sure it's fairly filled in, should I say. Just a little bit like that. And then we'll go to our fill tool and we'll tap and drag to the right hand side a couple of times. Notice how if I only do that once, I get this kind of swirled effect like this. You can still see the brush strokes, whereas if I do it again, it will start to fill that in and just simply overlap everything and hit the tick when you're done. Just quickly, if you need to though, change your brush back to say calligraphy and just use anything, just a monoline brush with a large size. Something nice and solid, just so that you can just get in there and cover up any little gaps from the paintbrush itself, maybe even round off certain areas as well if you don't want them. We tried to create like a tree-like bank. We're going to create another new layer and drag it underneath that layer. We're going to go back to our brush under paint, back to the old Gouache, and we're going to go to our colors. We're going to go ahead and use this color here, top right of the palette, so far right on the top row. And we'll introduce another set of sort of tree-like shapes. Now we actually want this layer in front, so we're going to drag it in front. We want to be in front, creating circular shapes here, just to create the sort of idea and the sort of concept of some like bush and tree-like areas here. You could get a little bit higher in the top left corner if you want to. And once you've got something like that, we can then go ahead and go to our tools, fill again, and tap and drag to the right a couple of times. Hit the tick, and again you may need to go ahead and grab your brush under calligraphy and the monoline brush, for example, and just fill in any little gaps. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab my edit tool and I'm going to grab transform, and I'm just going to move mine down just a tiny bit. I want that banking in behind just to have a little bit of space to breathe. So a little bit larger and a little bit lower, and that will do the trick. I'll hit the tick when I'm done. Now we're going to go further back again. So we're going to go ahead now and start on the sky. Let's go 3 dots though and hit save. We'll create a new layer, drag it all the way to the bottom. So we're going to start working now on the sky. We are going to go ahead and go to our colors. We're going to grab this gray here. So it's the third color from the right on the bottom row. We're going to go to our fill tool, tools and fill, and tap and drag to the right to fill in the whole layer and hit the tick when you're done. We'll then change our color to the second color from the right on the bottom row. Your brush wants to be set to the option of sprayers, so we need to find sprayers and the soft airbrush. Now I typically change a couple of settings on my airbrush, so I'm going to make it nice and large to start with, around about, say, what size is that? Nearly around about 800 mark. And then this option here, if I tap on here, I can see that the opacity is 64 and the flow is also 64. It's just a personal preference, to be honest, based off of how the brush tends to work in this app. Now here is where our light source is going to be, pretty much in this kind of second column here. So in a circular motion, I want to start to go round and round and round, and then just here start to really widen up that color. So pressing quite firm and then just blending out the yellowy kind of tone up and into the sky and a little bit further down as well in behind your landscape. So nice and bright in this spot here. And then we're going to counter that by adding in some darkness as well. So we're going to go to our colors and grab the bottom of the far right of our palette. And we're going to go ahead. I'll move my layers out of the way. And then we're just going to curve at the top left with some good pressure and going over myself a few times because my opacity is nice and low. I've got good chance to build up the color, but I definitely want to make sure that the top left and the top right is nice and dark. And I'm just blending it over the top, so we end up with this dark gradient into grey and then into the yellowy tone. Let's add some clouds now. Let's create a new layer. Let's go to our brush and go into sprayers again, but you'll find this cloudy brush. We're going to tap on that. We're going to set the size to something a little bit larger than what I've got it currently set to. We're going to go to around about the 250 mark. And we're just going to draw in some dark clouds towards the top left and top right. And we need to draw in essentially I'm going to refer to as a couple of lines. We'll just keep it simple. couple of rows of cloud. You can press quite firm on the outer edges and just go over yourself a few times. My opacity, etc. is set to 100%, so you don't need to worry about that being off. You do have to just layer this on over and over and over again. And you can do a little bit in behind here too. Just a little bit behind, just adding in some clouds in the sky, making it a nice sort of dark evening here. And then we're going to go ahead and we will create another new layer. We'll go to our colors and grab the same yellow, so bottom of that second column from the right. Size, we'll bring that right down now to around about 120. And we're going to zoom in on some of these clouds. If not smaller than that, we can go even smaller, probably down to around about 50. And I'm looking for some of those dark shapes, and I'm trying to brighten up now the underside of some of them. So I'm going to add in some brighter highlight where the light is catching on the underside of this cloud. So just something simple like that. That's why I wanted you to create those kind of line shapes, because it just keeps it simple, if I'm honest. And you can just go back over yourself a couple of times. The more you do, you'll get a good chunk of color under here. Now don't worry too much. This is not going to be your be all and end all of your clouds. You can add in a little bit here towards the top as well, because we're going to smudge it in a second. So that's what I'm trying to refer to. So you're not going to have to leave it as it is. And this is just a fairly simple approach to doing some cloud work in here. Add in a little bit over here too. A little chunky bit in there. So all you do is you lay down the foundations like this. We then go to our smudge tool. We tap on our smudge tool. We're going to go to sprayers and the soft airbrush. We're going to go ahead and set the size of the soft airbrush to about 88. And the settings, I've got the blur set to 33, pull to 6, flow to 53. And it's really important that you press this off. You want it looking like mine. You do not want to sample the layers underneath. And if I go to the very bottom, the opacity is 100% and the flow is 64. And all you're going to want to do is zoom in, and then we're only smudging the yellow, remember. Now let's hit 3 dots and save just before we start. Now we're going to go around in a circular motion and start smudging this out. If you smudge where I am, you're going to end up creating this kind of blob. Now you do have two options. You can start up here and smudge down, where you're just basically pushing the yellow tone right towards the underside of the cloud, just highlight in the very bottom. You can even push up from the bottom and push it up. Or if you want to, you can just give it the odd quick whip upwards like this, and then add in a little bit more yellow to that surface of the cloud. So you can decide. I love it when there's a thin line like so, and you just have a little bit of that underlighting there from the actual cloud and the sun. And you're just going to want to repeat this all the way around. So just push down primarily, push all of those highlights right towards the edge of the cloud. So a little something like this. This is all we want to do. We just want to show the light catching on the underside. Break up your lines as well. Don't be afraid to literally just smudge all the way through. Create gaps so that it's not just a solid line from side to side. It's got a little bit of something else happening there. Earlier I added a tiny little bit up there, and I'll just keep a little bit of it. I'll push these down. I'll give it the odd occasional little whip, and you can push it across if you want to as well, just to smudge it. Over here, maybe I'll be a little bit braver and we'll keep a lot more of the yellow. So I'll just create a couple of curved areas in there, whip the color out on the right hand side and leave this area here like so. They always look quite effective like that. The only other area I've got to work with is just behind the tree here. And that's it. That's all we want to do. We can maybe create like a whip or two in some of these areas. I urge you just to mess around with it, learn to use the smudge tool and see what other options you can come up with. But something simple like that will do the trick. The only thing you then want to do is just go back down to the dark layer of cloud underneath. And now just maybe push some of the darkness just towards the edge where that highlighted tone is. So the highlight really is the sort of end of the cloud. You can have the odd little bit drop in, but you could push, for example, here, push all the way through and just push it right up to where that highlighted edge is. There we go. Lovely. Now let's go ahead and add in a light source. 3 dots though, save. We're going to go ahead and go in front of all the layers except for underneath our ground. So we're going to go ahead and we want to be creating a new layer and drag it underneath your ground layer. We want to tap on this layer and we want to change its blend mode from normal to linear dodge. We want to go ahead and grab our brush again. So paintbrush. You should still have the same yellow, but it's bottom of the second column from the right. and your brush wants to be set to the option of airbrush, and so sprayers and soft airbrush. Size wants to be nice and large, probably going to go up to around about, say, 400, if not larger. Let's go a bit braver, let's go up to 700. Now our light source is here. So what I want to do is I want to go round in a circular motion and add in this beaming light source through here. Look how cool that looks. Now, it's really important that you also take your time here to build up that color. So you could always go ahead and undo it and just keep building it up. You may even want to make the brush size a bit bigger than that. But the main concept is to create a large glow, but not overdo the glow from here. We don't want to blow this out too much. So just keep going around a couple of times, see what kind of effect you like the most. That looks pretty good, so I think I'll leave it like that. Then we want to go ahead and just show how the lighting affects these hills here. So we're going to go ahead and go to the brown hill at the back. We're going to go ahead and we're going to tap on it. We're going to go ahead and lock it so we can't paint outside of what's already on it. We'll go to our colors and we'll grab this color here. So it's this color here. It's the bottom of the fourth column. And we're going to zoom in with a slightly smaller brush size of around about, say, 300 to 400. Just very lightly brighten up this top edge. It's a really subtle change, so don't worry if you can't see it too much. It's just really subtle. And then tap on the layer and turn off the lock. Then go to your create options and go to the option of edit. And then we want to go to edit and filters. Then structure and blur. Now I'm aware that there is currently a bit of an issue with some people's devices where the blur is not working up to a high percentage. Now don't worry, we don't even need a high percentage. We just want it quite low. If it's only working at low percentages, you can always duplicate it. So do the effect multiple times. So I'm just going to go ahead and I just want to blur that out a little bit. But because it's quite far back, we're going to go up to around about, say, 46% and hit the tick when you're done. Then we're going to go ahead and move forward a layer to this one here. We're going to tap on it. We're going to lock it. We're going to go ahead and go to our brush. We're going to go back to paint. We're going to go back to the old Gouache brush. Your color wants to be set to the bottom left of the palette. And we're going to quickly just add in some highlights on these edges. Very simple, really light pressure if you can. And maybe even in like a bit of a circular fashion, just some lighter tone on those edges. A little something like that, just to kind of show that there's a little bit of lighting on this top edge. And then that runs along the surface here, maybe catches on another tree or something here. Something really simple. You could even maybe create like a patch like that if you really want to. Then we'll go to our colors and we'll grab this color here, bottom of the second column. We'll go to our brush. We're going to go into sprayers and the soft airbrush again. And we're going to go ahead with a brush size fairly large, around about, say, 600. Bottom down here, start to darken that up and then wiggle it round in sort of random patches, a couple of taps here and there just to add in some shadows in different areas. And then we'll tap on the layer, we'll turn off the lock, and we'll also blur this too. So we'll go to our three dots, we'll hit save, we'll go to our tools, we'll go to edit, we'll go to edit and filters, structure and blur, and then we're going to blur this one out. So less than the one that was behind it. So behind was around about 46. So we could probably go down to around about, say, 34 and hit the tick when you're done. Now, potentially you might not like some of these shapes here. So you may want to go ahead and go to the brush again, soft airbrush, and this color here in the top right, so the base color, and then maybe just whip some color into those with the soft airbrush, breaking them down. And I just want to tone down the edge of them a little bit, so they're a little bit like the clouds. You're pushing the base color up and up towards the edge so that you end up with this little outline effect. There we go, that's better. So now let's go ahead and add some mist. So we'll create another new layer. So it's going to be in front of this hillside. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab this color here. It's the bottom of the fifth column. And your brush wants to be set to a nice large size, around about, say, 400 to 500. We're just going to wiggle our pen down here, nice and light to start with if you have pressure sensitivity. If you don't, just simply go ahead and tap on here and bring the opacity even lower. And I'm just going to wiggle my pen at random heights. I'm then going to bring the brush size down to around about, say, 200 and wiggle that through. And different heights, different pressures. You can press to a degree quite firm towards the very bottom. I'm going to go even smaller now, 170, and just wiggle in some misty kind of lines and shapes in here to add some atmosphere. And then again, a little bit brighter behind your ground there will look great. And then just go ahead and set your brush a little bit larger, so towards the larger end, so around about say 700, and just lightly go through there, making sure the bottom is nice and misty. Now, this is when I introduce a really cool trick that I like to do when we're doing scenes like this to bring in some effect like mist. We're going to turn off our tree, we're going to turn off our land. We're going to go ahead and go up to the top right here. We're going to go to Edit, and we're going to go to Select and Rectangle. It's really important that you take a look at my settings here. Also up here, you can see a couple of different options here. So make sure to pause if you need to, just in case any of these look different. All you need to do is draw a rectangular box across the whole of the screen, your canvas. And we want to go to this option here called Copy Merged. This is a really important icon to see as well, so make sure it looks like that. So we're going to go Copy Merged. And then if you take a look at my layers now, if I hit the tick, I've got a new layer with all of my design on. It needs to be just behind the ground. I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to tap on the layer. I'm going to change its blend mode from normal to the option of lighten. I'm then going to go ahead and tap away. I'm going to hit the eye icon to bring back in the ground and the crow. And then on that layer for the whole of the design that we changed to lighten, we're going to go up to our tools and edit, and we're going to go to filters, structure and blur, and we're going to blur it, and we will end up, look, this is nothing down here. And if I bring it up, we end up with this really awesome kind of blurry, hazy look to the background. The difference is so good. We lose so much structure of the design, and we can really have some fun with it. Now it's up to you how much you want to go to. You can of course turn it on and off just to see the difference. You can hold down here just to see how it just adds a bit of haze to the background. So I'm going to go to 50% and hit the tick. Now let's focus on our tree. So before we do, hit the three dots and save. Let's go ahead and go in front of our tree. So we're going to go ahead and create a new layer, tap on it and clip it to the tree. So now we can only draw on the shape that is the tree. Now I want you to turn off your ground as well, just so that you can see the roots, because that's important, because we're going to accent the lighting onto our tree now. Now temporarily, I'm just going to drag my color into the top left of the palette disc here, or the square, to white. I'm going to go to my brush. I'm going to go to the option of pens, and I'm going to use the old Inca brush for this one. And we're going to go ahead and accent the roots, etc. Again, let's just hit three dots and save just to be sure. Now, we're showing where the light's coming through, the light's behind. So for example, with a brush size set to about 21 pixels there, I'm going to go along this root here, along the top edge of this root here, creating wiggles and bumps and lumps. And you just want to show all of the curves, the sort of interesting avenues that the tree has grown in, and all of the angles that the roots now make. And then what we want to do is we want to show a really cool twist in the tree here. So for example, I'm going to start over here. I'm going to come down here, and then I'm going to sort of pivot off like this and then come down on myself. So it's a bit of an S shape almost. And what that does is that shows that the tree started to spin and curve around. And then I can start to make up even more kind of storyline with it by introducing roots, etc., that kind of curl upwards like this to show that they all then twist around maybe to the opposite side underneath that main twist. You don't want to draw trees where the lines are straight up and straight down. That's really boring. You want to introduce some elements that are nice and interesting to look at. This tree's got a beautiful curve to it. And every time you have these big branches, you can make the decisions. How do you want these lines to work? Do you want to sort of come up here, along here, and then straight off to the opposite side of the tree so it kind of twists round on itself? Here again, I've got another branch. I'll run up here, and then I'll show how it runs off in this direction. And then if I push this line all the way off to the right hand side, it twists beyond us again and goes round the opposite side. So you can really have some fun, create some interesting design choices to your tree. The curve here will look absolutely awesome. Just embrace it. And this color is temporary. It's not the final color, but you should now start to see all of these amazing shapes that you just want to introduce in your tree's body, and just the contour and spin of it, and how it just bumps and lumps all grow out from different areas. Maybe this bit here goes along here, up and over there. And then I can run some lines into that if I want to. I can run lines out and across. Now don't worry too much about the branches over here on the other side. We're just focusing on our main tree trunk for the minute. I'm just going to introduce some lines like this, a couple more along there, And then let's go down and then start to split those out into multiple avenues. So a little something like that. So at the top, we've got some interesting ideas happening. And then, as I mentioned, we don't want to do too much over here. So we're just going to go ahead and go down some of these branches just to show little areas of highlight. The light source is over there. So you could accent some of these. And you can see how quick and easy I can do it because it doesn't really matter too much. It's the underside over here towards the top. Underside of some of these ones all the way up to the very top edge. Little something like that, just to add in a little bit of light. You don't have to do light on everything all the time. You can sacrifice certain areas and leave it to the shadows. Let's run up here just a tiny bit on the rear of the tree. I'm not too interested, to be honest, at the rear. I just want to leave it kind of just a bit scarce. Now, I know that looks a bit messy for now, but what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll tap on this layer. We'll lock it. We'll go to our colors and we'll grab the correct color, which is the second color in the palette. We'll go to our brush. We'll go ahead and go to the option of sprayers. We're just going to use something really solid like the hard airbrush. We'll set the size to a massive size, opacity, etc. just to 100% because all we want to do is just paint it in with the correct color. There we go. So it's all now with this now more muted purpley tone. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new layer. It will clip itself automatically. We want to select all those lines. We're going to tap on those lines. We're going to go ahead and we're going to use the option of select. So here, and then we're going to tap on the layer above, the empty one. We're going to tap on it and we're going to add a mask to it. So we're going to hit mask. So tap on mask. And then what we'll have done is we'll have added a mask to this new clip layer that matches the lines of this layer. It's like a clipping inception almost. So making sure you're on this part here where my pencil is, and you go to your color, you can go ahead and set it to the third color on that top row. You can just use the soft airbrush, for example. So we can go ahead and tap away. We can move our layers out the way too. We can go to our brush. We can go to the soft airbrush. So airbrushing and the soft airbrush. Bring the size down, something quite small that you're in control of it a bit more. So probably around about 30 to 50 mark. And then you can go over the top of some of these branches here. Now I'm probably going to set the opacity up to 100% just so I don't miss anything. And I'm trying to now show where the lighting, I think, is going to hit on my tree and all the curves and contour of the tree and brighten them up. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you want to sacrifice color of those lines to the shadows. So for example, we'll bring the lighting around here. We'll maybe brighten up the tiniest bit down here, but leave this area here underneath the curve, underneath the twist, which shows us that the lighting just doesn't go under there. And this actually bulges out quite a lot. We can go up there, we can go up the sort of side here of this one, and you're just now accenting where you want the lighting to be. Now this isn't our final bit of lighting. Now I'm just going to quickly run pretty much all over the branches. I want those branches to have at least this tone on top of them. Now if I miss something, that's fine. I'm really not fussed because it will just mean that they are going to forever be midtones, and that's perfectly fine. I'm just running them over the top where I can remember roughly we entered those additional colors. Lovely. Then we're going to go ahead and tap on that layer. We're going to go ahead and we're going to duplicate it. So tap on duplicate, and we want to tap on this option here for clear. That will empty the layer, but we keep it with the mask on, because now you can go to your colors and repeat this one more time with this color here. So it's the fourth color on that top row. And now you can get in there and accent even brighter where you want the highlights to kind of sit. Now I urge you to keep this to a minimum. I'm going to bring the opacity right back down to 64% where I prefer it to be. And then I can build up that color. I can probably even bring the brush size down to, say, a smaller size, maybe around about, say, 29. And just accent maybe the top edges of some of those curves in here. A couple of these areas here where I think the lighting is going to be at its brightest, where it's being lit from that direction. So definitely all the way down that root, down the side profile of the tree. Lovely. Let's do all of those little avenues, of course, in the actual branches. Some of these can end up with little bright highlights on them. Again, if I miss any of them, it's fine. All they are now, they're just going to be, we already said that before, and you can just sacrifice them. You can see roughly where some of your previous tones are, but if you miss some, that's fine. It's the tree that's the most important. And again, you don't have to do a lot to it. Up here, we'll definitely introduce a lot of highlight just on this top edge up here where the sun or moon, whatever we think this is catching on our branch up there, a little bit on there too maybe. I'm going to brighten up a few more of these down here just to really emphasize that coloring and try and show a little bit more character in this space down here compared to the rest of the design. Lovely. So we've got some awesome highlights in there. Now let's hit the three dots, let's hit save, and then let's go ahead and go to our layers and bring back in the ground. So we're going to turn this layer back on here, and we've got our ground in play. We're going to add some texture to that. Now, if you're struggling for layers, you can always go ahead and tap on a layer here, for example, with your sky, and you can go ahead and merge it down. So hit merge, and you can keep doing that. The only layers we now need to keep really are the ground and these layers up here, really. So all the rest of it, bar this lighten layer and the linear dodge, you could probably merge them all in. So we're going to go to this layer here for our ground. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to tap on it and I'm going to lock it. I'm going to go to my brush, making sure it's still the soft airbrush under airbrushing, and my color wants to be set now to one of the ground tones, which is this one here. It's the second from the right. We're going to set the size to around about, say, 300 to 400, and we're going to add some brown to here. Now it's really subtle, you might not even be able to see it too well on camera. We're just adding in a blanket of brown here. There we go, just towards the top. Leave the very bottom edge of your ground. We're not interested in the corners of our design necessarily. Then we're going to go ahead and go to our color and grab this tone here. It's the third color from the right. It's a nice red tone. We're going to go to our brush. We're going to go into miscellaneous, and we're going to go ahead and use we can use either the dry sponge or the scribble scrabble here. I'm going to use scribble scrabble. That looks pretty good. We'll set the size to something nice and small, maybe around about, say, 40 to, if we're not slightly larger, we could probably go about sort of 70. And we're just going to go ahead and run in some area of ground here. Oh, this is a great brush. This wasn't the one I initially practiced with, so this one just took my interest and intrigued me. And we're just going to run in some lines through our ground here just to create elements of the ground that are getting a little bit more lighting. We want our ground to be nice and scarce, so you don't need to add too much of this, and maybe the odd little bit that runs over towards the right, but that's primarily going to be shadow tone. So a little something like this. We're then going to go to our colors and grab this color here just beside it. So it's the fifth color on that top row, and then you're going to want to add some of this. Keep it nice and scarce, probably even a smaller brush size. Let's go down to around about 40 now, and start to add in some little speckles of this yellow tone. Wiggle your pen up and down, trying to create like grassy areas that just kind of getting a little bit of lighting from that moon or sun, whatever you believe it to be. Neither is incorrect, to be honest with you. A little bit on that edge, couple of wiggles through over here, just keeping it nice and scarce. A couple of taps here and there will look good. It's just the odd little speckle that's just sticking up enough. And then if we zoom out on that, that looks pretty good. But what you can then also go ahead and do is just go back to the base color, which is this color here, top left of the palette. And you can just now get in here and break up some of these tones that you created. So get in there now and break them down. Don't be afraid to always bring back in your shadows. I always do this, right? I get carried away with adding in too much of the highlight and brightening it, and then you realize I've not got any shadows in there anymore, especially around in these gaps here behind our roots. Of course we want to shadow this up. We want to show that there's a shadow, so I'm pushing the root across, basically adding in a bit of a shadow in here. It might be really sort of a bit tricky to see on camera, and I will try and fix it in post if possible, but a little bit of darkness around the base here of our tree, and then running in some lines through the ground just to show that it's not perfectly flat. We don't want anything sort of too smooth in here. Breaking it down, especially towards the bottom of the canvas. I'm going down to about 17% now, so I can just see if I can get some little grooves in the ground. But you don't want to destroy it too much. A little bit of texture on there is fine, especially when you zoom all the way out. Now, just like before, we're going to introduce another lighten layer. So we're going to go ahead and go to our tools up here. We're going to go to Edit, Select and Rectangle. And again, draw a rectangle across the whole of your canvas and go to the option down here of Copy Merged. It will drop a new layer in somewhere. Just simply hold down on it, drag it all the way to the top. Make sure it's not clipped and hit tick when you're done. And then tap on this layer, change the blend mode from normal to lighten. And then again, once you've done that, move that out of the way. We'll go up to our tools, edit. We'll go to filters, edit and filters, structure and blur. And once we're through, we can add a nice hazy bit of sort of atmosphere to the foreground as well. So we can go up to around about, say, 40%. Hit the tick when you're done. You've got a nice little bit of atmosphere here right at the front. If you want to, by the way, you can tap on the grid now and turn it off as well, visibility wise. And this is completely optional, so you don't have to do this. You can create a new layer. You can go to your brush again, go back into the option of pens, and we're going to use the same one we did before, which was the Manga Inca. I'm going to set the size to something fairly large, maybe around about 40% or 40 pixels, should I say. And we're going to draw in another tree over here. A very quick one though, so it's not going to be too much of a struggle. I'm just going to go all the way to the very top. I'll leave a bit of a gap on that top left edge. And then I'll go to my fill tool, just fill in this gap here, hit the tick when I'm done. And then all I'm going to do is just run a branch or two that is just making its way up and over the top there of our design, trying not to interfere with our sort of main element, of course, of the crow. We're just trying to introduce a couple of branches here and there that are just at the very top. We don't want anything that's too repetitive or too, taking over the scene as such. You can introduce a couple like this along the very edge of the design. It doesn't need to be anything sort of too perfect necessarily. We're going to blur it in a second, but maybe another branch. I'll thicken this up a tiny bit just to kind of show it is quite a main branch that's running over the top of the scene. And again, maybe some really thin ones. If you want to bring your brush size down to something around about 12, you can spend some time adding in some details in there. They don't all have to curl upwards. They can curl down in a similar fashion to the sort of crow tree itself. A couple pointing down like that, a couple maybe off to the side, all the way up to the top. And then you can go ahead and go to your create options. You can go to edit. We can go to filters, structure and blur. And once that loads, we can then go ahead and blur that at the foreground here. So it's not the main focal point. We can set it to probably 50% is fine. Hit the tick when you're done. And if we pinch with two fingers and we go full screen with 4, we end up with today's finished design. So I hope you enjoyed this Halloween themed design. As always, make sure to tag me in your finished creations over on Instagram. Is a really good place for you to do so, or anywhere else. I'm pretty much on every single social with the Joel Designs channel. Make sure to subscribe for more digital art tutorials. And if you want to support the channel and all the work that I do here, you can become a member of the channel. Not only do you get a membership badge beside your name that grows over time, you also get early access to tutorials, and I'm going to start building up a bit more of an exclusive catalogue as well, just for members. So make sure to check that out using the link in the description down below. And if you like this video here on YouTube, you'll love this one on the screen now. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.